And this is Ryan here.
Yeah, and this is I guess it's the WrestleWatch Podcast. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what we'll call it, but it's
Yeah, that sounds fine enough.
I think so. So this is going to be a weekly show where we take a look at the wrestling landscape and determine the likelihood of talent who are going to jump from one promotion to another. The main idea of this podcast kind of came about just as something we felt was kind of a gap that wasn't really being addressed. You know, a lot of podcasts are reviewing shows, giving their hot takes and things like that. And I've always been someone who very much did not want to do a wrestling podcast at all, just because I felt like it was super oversaturated. I feel like I had nothing to add that a million other people weren't already saying. But this is an area where I think that a lot of people there's a lot of interest, especially as we're looking at different promotions throwing a lot more money at talent than they have ever done before. And because of that, I think having discussions focused specifically on that are very good.
Yeah, I've been also feeling the same way. And I've when you look at a bunch of the other kinds of podcasts, and when you look at analytics and things like that, it's much more based off of the business side, the broadcast side, things of that nature, ticket sales, things like that. Not a lot of podcasts that are talking about the wrestlers side, the talent side, and what's going to be happening with those kinds of people. So yeah, I'm excited to try to get into this with you.
Yeah, and I think the one thing to kind of keep in mind with this is that we're going to try to be, and this is something that's very difficult to do with this, is try to be as objective as possible with this and attempt to really understand what the talent want, what the companies are going to offer, what they can offer, and what they're willing to offer. And through that, what we have is we've established, and what we're going to review it weekly through what we call our WrestleWatch committee, where we've actually formed a tier list of talent that we think are potentially going to jump in the near future. And through this list, we can kind of like pinpoint ones that are going to jump. And then every single week, we're going to update that list and see who've moved. So we've been actually keeping this list for, maybe we've been updating it pretty regularly for at least maybe 3 or 4 months at this point.
It's actually been since around July of last year.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So a lot longer than I thought. We're so almost 9 months at this point. So over the past 9 months, we've been shifting this tier list about as we see talent who are going to move, and we've been pretty accurate with some things. I mean, I think we had Edge pretty early. We had him pinned.
Yes, we did. We were pretty good about a bunch of people that also didn't jump. So, for example, Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, we had pretty low on our tier list, so low likelihood of jumping. And, well, they didn't. They signed back up with AEW.
Yeah, I think the only one that was maybe a blind spot for us was Jade Cargill. That one kind of threw us for a loop.
Oh, 100%. Jade Cargill, we added to the tier list maybe a week before she officially signed. Yes, I'm looking at our logs right now. It was exactly 1 week before she officially signed with WWE. We put her on the tier list because there was nothing at all of rumors, nothing. And then all of a sudden, bam, debuts at SummerSlam.
Yeah. So we spent a long time talking about the tier list. Do you want to kind of go over how this tier list actually works?
Yeah, sure. So, concept of tier list, I think most people have a basic idea of what they are. We look at it through pop culture and we rank things, characters, games, movies, whatever you like. The idea behind the WrestleWatch tier list is trying to do that for talent movements. So this tier list is ranking the likelihood that a talent will sign to a new promotion within the next year. It's not about whether they're going to leave their current promotion, but the odds of signing somewhere else. For our purposes, the promotions that we consider are the following, and I'm listing it in alphabetical order just so that we don't have anybody worried about any favoritism, because the first one is AEW. alphabetically speaking, of course. So we have AEW, New Japan Pro Wrestling, Ring of Honor, Stardom, TNA, and WWE. Now, the reason for these six promotions in particular, we're looking at them as major destinations. They have the potential to sign the big name talent. So, for example, TNA, some people might be thinking to themselves right now, oh, TNA is on the list. Well, they did put out some serious offers last year for CM Punk and Will Ospreay. We're talking seven-figure offers, so it's pretty big stuff for TNA to be doing. And those offers were considered by both of those guys. CM Punk went to Chicago shows for TNA and was there to see how everything was. Will Ospreay multiple times has mentioned how much he loved working at TNA. So they should be considered on the list as a potential destination. Doesn't mean that they're going to sign everybody, but that's what we're looking about. So the list of promotions is subject to change if any drop off or new ones premiere. For example, we've been talking about the one that Rossi, that was formerly of Stardom, might be starting up, and that one might bubble up in the future. So just because the promotion isn't on the list doesn't mean that they're not major or important. Just means that the odds of them being a landing spot for a major talent isn't as likely for a number of reasons. So we're talking about promotion that's focused on part-times or pay-by-appearance contracts, promotion that don't have a history of signing outside talent, etc. So those are just outside the purview of what we're looking at on the tier list. So yeah, it's a tier list, so it's ranked from S down all the way down to F tier. S means the talent is signing somewhere fairly imminently. C, we're saying that they're around the 50-50 kind of shot. And then F, that means there's very low odds of them signing somewhere new, but there's still an outside shot of that happening. So once we go through the tier list, you'll hear some of the names and you'll say, okay, yeah, now I understand what F tier is. Moving up the tier list thus means the talent is more likely to be signing somewhere new. Moving down, of course, means that they're going to be more likely to signing to their current promotion. When someone is announced as signing with a new promotion or re-signing with their current one, the person is just deleted from the tier list. The ranking methodology we use is a number of factors, including the news and rumors from reliable sources, things that talent have said or done that might affect their likelihood of moving or give insight into how they're thinking, the talent's history. So somebody that might have history at a certain promotion or might have history of moving a lot, the current booking of that talent, and just the landscape of professional wrestling in general. And one of the things that we saw this past week was the landscape of wrestling when it comes to the big money contracts. So we can start to get into who's on the tier list here, if you'd like to.
Yep, I think I will do that. So I think we're just going to start with S tier and then kind of work our way down. So currently, and this is as of this past week, so this has been March 9th, I believe, is when this was updated, correct? So it would have been yesterday.
Yes. Okay. Yes, this is what we put together yesterday.
Okay, so looking at that, so our S tier right now, we have Mercedes Moné, we have Black Taurus, we have Camille, and then we have Tama Tonga. So those are the four people that we have as S tier who are imminently going to be jumping.
Yeah.
I guess I'll just go through. Should we just go through them all and then kind of come back, or should we just do it each tier?
Let's go through each tier just so that it keeps it up in people's memories of who we're talking about.
Sure.
So of course, Mercedes. I mean, this week, I feel there might be a rumor of her popping up somewhere this week.
Yeah, you know what? Here's the other thing with this. I know a lot of people are saying, well, they should just announce it because everyone already knows. It's like, well, everyone already knows. So I don't know that you necessarily need to announce it. And it worked really well with Punk, so maybe it'll work really well this time. So, and so not
yeah.
And obviously she's showing up on Wednesday.
Yeah, my take on it, if we're getting into the culture of hot takes here, mine's pretty lukewarm take. I pretty much agree with you. I think that they could have done a few more sly references, maybe a Cookie Monster shirt here and there, like they did for Punk. But I mean, it's her font. It's her font. It says Boston with two S's. it's pretty obvious what's going to happen here, and that is why she is an S tier. It is imminent. We all know it.
Yep. All right. Black Taurus is an interesting one. I refresh my if I have this wrong, I just as I go over kind of his background, but he was originally a AAA talent.
Yep.
He left AAA, lost the rights to Black Taurus.
Yes.
And AAA has introduced a new Black Taurus, or about to introduce new Black Taurus, if I understand correctly. And
yes. Yeah.
yeah, sorry. And I'm more of a CMLL guy than a AAA guy for the record. So if I miss things on AAA, it's not just because I have an issue with them. It's just I wasn't keeping up as well. And then so he is someone. He's someone who absolutely is going to end up somewhere. He's an incredible talent, absolutely incredible.
Not even just that, but with the rights to the Taurus character, he posted on social media recently an update showing a photo of what looked like copyright papers from Mexico. So it looks like he's trademarking something, perhaps a new character, perhaps a new iteration of his character. But yeah, AAA owns the rights to the Black Taurus IP, as some other people might be calling it. And yeah, it's been rumored, heavily rumored, that he's going to be showing up with AEW ROH. I believe that Lucha Blog even said that he was signed, but has not debuted, has not premiered since dropping the Taurus gimmick or switching up the gimmick. So that's why he stays in S tier and has not been deleted from the tier list yet.
Yeah, and you know what? He's one who's obviously worked at the time it was Impact or TNA. He's someone who has done a lot of American indies. He is someone who realistically could have ended up anywhere. I mean, I could see every single company being interested in him, so I'm not completely surprised that someone jumped on him. And, you know, right now, this is the climate where if you're a free independent talent with a lot of potential, you're going to get a lot of big money offers. And, you know, good for him.
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, we're looking at a couple months ago where Dragon Lee signed with WWE as well. So there is a lot of movement happening and a lot of attention being given to a lot of the Mexican wrestlers right now.
Yep. All right. So the next one we'll move on to is Camille, who is the former NWA Women's Champion. Did a few appearances on AEW television. Had a notable match with a my God,
Layla Hirsch.
Layla Hirsch, thank you. I don't know why I was drawing a blank on that. Layla Hirsch, and with a very famous photo of them showing the difference in size, because Camille is a very, very tall woman, and Layla Hirsch is not. So this is an interesting one because she, for a long time, people kind of pegged her as like inevitably going to WWE.
Yeah.
And then something changed, and that was no longer happening. Now the reports are that she is heading to AEW.
Yeah, so the report originally was even that they had offered her an NXT contract, but she's, I believe, has been seen around a few AEW talent recently. I think she was even at an AEW show, if memory serves. So it looks like that might be the way the wind is blowing. But yeah, WWE has shown a lot of interest in Camille as well.
Yeah. And the next one, and this is the last one in S tier, is going to be Tama Tonga. And here's the thing with Tama Tonga. He's one that I feel like for the last 5 years, every single year, a discussion comes up of, is he going to WWE? Like it just never ended. And it would always just be, and I'm sure it was all negotiations and going back and forth, trying to get the best deal from New Japan, but it would always happen. And this time did feel different. It really, and I don't know if it's just the landscape of the yen in Japan at the time, or maybe it just felt like it was time for him, but it definitely felt like this was time for him to finally make the move. And it sounds like that's happening because the reports are he is going to WWE.
Yes. Yeah. So that is a big move for him, especially at this stage of his career. There have been rumors that perhaps other members of Guerrillas of Destiny at other times would be going to WWE or will still be going there. I remember that there was a a little bit of a short list that got out there of people that WWE was looking at from New Japan. I recall Tamatanga, Hikuleo were on that list. So it's no surprise that Tamatanga is very likely imminently heading to WWE.
Yes. And then that's it for the S tier. So now we're going to move down a tier to the A tier. So before we go into this, A tier would be people that we're pretty confident are going to end up someplace else, but we don't think it's necessarily going to be imminently. Would that be a fair
Yeah, not
assessment?
imminently, or there's still an outside chance that something, there might be a hang up. There might be something, just one thing though. It's not as it's very, very, very likely. So we'll get through the names here, and it should be pretty obvious once we get through these names how they're different from the ones that we just talked about.
Yeah. So the first one is going to be Mustafa Ali, who famously wanted to get out of his WWE contract for years, was very vocal on social media about wanting to get out of it. Finally did, and now he is going on his tour of the Indies, essentially, or tour all these different promotions where he's doing this President Ali gimmick.
Yes.
I've seen him in GCW. I got to see him live actually. He is doing freelance in Chicago, a lot of Chicago movies. He's a Chicago guy. And he's also doing a lot of social media things, and he's going to be in New Japan. He's wrestling Hiromu Takahashi on April 12th. So he's making his rounds for sure.
Yes, yes. Mustafa Ali, he's getting a lot of buzz around his indie run here. Now, the one of the things, this is one of the things that separates him, even though he is currently the holder of the TNA X Division Championship. It's a big thing to notice here, is that he's a current champion in one of the promotions that we consider as a landing spot. Now, why is he not deleted? It's because he is looking like he is trying to stay on the indie circuit for a while and work this gimmick out, this President Ali gimmick. So it does not seem imminent that he is going to full-time sign with TNA. And as mentioned before, also he is doing some dates with New Japan. But it wouldn't surprise either of us, I don't think, if he signs full term, long term with one of those promotions.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing to kind of keep in mind with all of this is that, in this particular climate, just because, you're a champion in a promotion doesn't necessarily mean that they've locked you down. And
Yeah,
that's really what we're focusing on here is like, have you signed like a deal with a company to actually stay with them? So yeah.
Yeah, we have somebody down in C tier that we'll get to that he is currently the top champion, I believe, or he just was the top champion in a promotion. So we'll get to him pretty soon here.
All right. So the next one we're going to talk about is Giulia, which over the last 12 hours has actually already created some news. So
Oh yeah.
Giulia is from Stardom, was the New Japan Strong Women's Champion. She just lost it last night to Stephanie Vaquer. And
Yes.
she is in typical Giulia fashion, she's not doing really well politically with her current promotion and is looking to jump. So the talk is
Yeah.
she's going to be going to WWE eventually. However, right now, Rossy Ogawa, the former owner of Stardom, is starting up his own promotion, breaking away from Bushiroad after he was fired. And the rumors are that she is going to help him set up this promotion and build it up before she eventually jumps to WWE. So this is an interesting one.
Yeah, this one's one of probably the weirdest and hardest to quantify onto the tier list, because the reports kind of feel sometimes conflicting with themselves about where she is going and what she's likely going to be doing. Um, she has a lot of loyalty to Rossi. She's one of four current or former Stardom talent that we've added to the tier list recently, but she was the first one of these. She's kind of the forebearer of what's going on, because there are rumors going back to last summer about her possibly leaving Stardom. Just we didn't understand at that time that perhaps Stardom might be breaking up a little bit. And that's where it gets really interesting with her, because it's the rumors back then was about WWE. She seemed to not like that the rumors got out there because she was committed to Stardom and Rossi. But the commitment to Stardom does not seem as strong anymore. But the problem here about how we're going to rank her is, Rossi's promotion doesn't exist yet. So we have no idea what that's going to look like, how that's going to look like, if it might be, as some people might think, a little bit of a WWE co-promotion of sorts.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see where this goes.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because we have specific promotions that we consider for this tier list. So she's A in the terms of she's eventually going to go to WWE, we think. We just don't know when.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, so the next one's going to be Tekla. Tekla is another Stardom talent. She's interesting in the sense that, especially when Stardom really, especially during COVID, kind of pulled back on bringing in foreign talent just out of necessity, with everything being shut down. She was one of the few like Gaijin talent in Stardom, and she really broke out. Part of Donna Del Mondo did really well there. And a lot of people think that she's really has a lot of charisma. She has a great look, and people think that would be great in America. But obviously, just because you think that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to go on the tier list because we think you're going to jump. However, she recently did an interview where she was kind of talking about going to either WWE or AEW and talking about how that would be interesting. And she just kind of was talking about the idea of, AEW would be really a good challenge and things like that. So it definitely sounds like she's interested in doing it. Yeah,
she, I believe her language about WWE was very nebulous, but flowery, it's the dream of a lot of people. And that's something that, going back to Mercedes Moné this week, it is the dream of a lot of people to go to WWE. They were the big thing. They were the only thing for 20 years about. So, of course, everybody's going to love talking about WWE and love them, even if nostalgically, if not in the current moment. But her comments about AEW were a lot more specific. She was talking about the creative freedom in AEW. She name dropped Mercedes Moné, who, of course, seems to, by reports from people like SRS, have been signed on the back end by AEW for a couple months now. And Athena, the current reigning, defending face of Ring of Honor. So it's highly likely that she'll be looking at going to America to one of those two promotions coming up, especially with DMD disbanding. And in her past at Stardom, she, of course, was one of the Artists of Stardom champions, trios champions, with DMD, Donna Del Mondo, and the SWA champ, which the SWA championship has a little bit of a history of folks that soon ended up in the American orbit. We're looking at Io Shirai, Toni Storm, Jamie Hayter, Bea Priestley, or Blair Davenport, as she's currently known in NXT. So would not be surprising whatsoever to see her making the jump.
Yeah, and SWA title by its nature was a title that essentially was set up almost for foreigners, because the whole gimmick with it was you could not defend it against someone of your own ethnicity, your own nationality. You needed to, I think it's your own nationality. So it's like if you were like an American, you couldn't defend it against another American. If you were Japanese, you couldn't defend it against someone from Japan. So it was a title that allowed a lot of foreign talent to kind of rise up and get some notoriety in Stardom. So it was interesting in that regard. And yeah, so because of that, a lot of foreign talent ended up holding it.
And Doug, now that we're done with 8 Dear, how about we take a quick little break and refill on some coffee? We'll be right back with the WrestleWatch Podcast. Coffee, so nice. Welcome back to the WrestleWatch Podcast. This is Ryan. I co-host with a co-most here, Doug. What's next up?
So the next tier we're going to look at is B tier, and I'm going to be honest with a lot of these. I may not have much to say, so it might just be
yeah. This
And
is where we start getting a boatload of names on these tiers. So we might not have a lot to say, but there'll be some names that start to pop out in between the seams here. So let's go through them. Yeah.
Sure. So the first one we have is going to be Dustin Rhodes. Currently in AEW, on the back end of his career. I think the reason we have him on B tier, obviously, is just because the idea that maybe he may want to go back to WWE at some point to finish off his career or have another match with Cody. But other than that, that's why he's in B tier. Just the idea that, if C tier is 50-50, we think it's likely he might do something else with WWE, and it's not like he's doing much in AEW at the moment anyway.
Yeah, and even interestingly enough, on this past Friday during the very controversial promo segment between The Rock, Roman, Cody, and Rollins on SmackDown, he was kind of alluded to as a Hall of Famer, and The Rock had to correct himself and say future Hall of Famer. So it does kind of tingle you a little bit of maybe soon.
Yep. And then the next one is Leo Rush. Leo Rush, for the most part, is someone who's very interesting in the sense that he's an incredibly talented guy. But for one reason or another, he keeps getting in trouble or keeps rubbing people the wrong way and keeps ending up out of promotions. So he's one. He still works New Japan here and there. But in terms of that, he's, he'll pop up in different promotions, but he hasn't been locked down anywhere for a long time. So there's always the idea that eventually he will, just because he's such an incredible talent, you can't deny it. But because of that, he's on B tier for no other reason.
His run in AEW was really liked by a lot of people, but just didn't work out for whatever reason there. And I believe it was with Dante Martin when Darius got injured that he was part of an angle there about, it was during the era of everybody having some kind of family office for some reason. And interestingly enough, with Leo Rush, before this past weekend, he was one of the rare people not currently signed to New Japan to actually be a full faction member in Japan for them. He's a member of Chaos. So not talking about foreign branches of anything, so except now I guess Jack Perry, who's also on our list. That's the second person, which makes me sometimes actually like House of Torture, but I don't like that feeling. So let's not dwell on that one. Let's go to the next name.
Absolutely. So the next one's going to be Sheamus. Sheamus is interesting in the sense that he is out right now, but just out with an injury. But he's someone who I think, in a similar vein to Edge, is someone who's been with WWE for a long time. He's spent nearly his whole career there, but he's also a guy who might be more valuable to another promotion than he is to WWE. And if that's the case, that other promotion might be willing to throw a little bit more money at him than WWE is. And if there's a situation where Sheamus is willing to take that extra money, it's very easy to see him jumping.
Yes, yeah. He's having a bit of a career renaissance lately, with WWE opening up their style in the intercontinental scene. He had a 5-star classics with Gunther. So a lot of people are looking at him and saying, oh, well, maybe it'd be fun to see him do a G1, or, maybe it'd be fun to see him, mixing up on the indies, other places and have some fun. Now, I don't know if his body is up to snuff enough, especially with them having this injury, to do something like a G1, but he's garnering that interest. And that's a big thing, that it seems like that there might be other places that might value him more than where he currently is. And he's one of it's your Magnificent Seven, which is a concept that we'll get into maybe on another episode.
Yes.
of some folks that might be currently in WWE that are like that Edge Adam Copeland model that might be valued more by other places than WWE. But we'll get into that on another date. But that's Sheamus.
Yep. So next is, I'm looking at the I believe that's Jacob Fatu next, correct?
Yes. Jacob Fatu from MLW, or formerly of MLW. It's a little bit complicated.
Yeah, so here's the thing with him. He's an incredible talent, obviously. The fact that he's able to kind of garner so much notoriety from being in MLW, which is not exactly a high-profile promotion, says a lot to his work ethic and just how he is. The problem is he also has a history of some professionalism issues. There's been issues with him just no showing at certain promotions on the indies, or not getting to where he needs to be, and just kind of some maturity issues, I think, have been something that has been discussed with him a lot.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
but he has some big names that are looking at him, specifically Booker T. He's really been high on Jacob Fatu and wanting WWE specifically to sign him. I mean, of course, Booker works for WWE, makes sense. But also, he kind of does make a lot of sense in WWE, especially with that last name, with that lineage, with that prestige. He was on the big screen of the family tree that The Rock showed off. So and with them seeming to possibly trying to expand the bloodline with the blood cousins of Haku with Tama Tonga, it's possible that they look a little bit closer to home and add another Fatu.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't be stunned. I mean, if he's going to end up anywhere, I believe he's going to end up there.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's a possibility of New Japan just because of him working some New Japan dates recently. But I think WWE is a likely destination. But at the same time, that's why he's in B tier right now. There's some smoke to it, but we're not sure if the fire's there.
Yep. All right. Next, we have Suri. And Suri is going to be in a similar vein to Giulia in the sense that she is someone who is in Stardom, which is a promotion that's really in flux in terms of the roster. And we don't really know who is staying and who is going to be jumping over to this Rossi promotion. She is someone who is in the Cinderella tournament currently.
Yes.
I don't know that she's going to be booked beyond that, though. And the one thing to keep in mind is there's a lot of names that we think are jumping that are not in the Cinderella tournament. However,
yes.
Suri is in the tournament. So that could be a question of just like when her deal's up, if she agreed to do it. But she's one that has made statements as well, indicating that she is going to potentially leave and go to this Rossi promotion.
Yeah, that's why she's kind of in the B tiers, because we've been waiting on to see who's going to show up for Cinderella, who's going to possibly be at the New Japan event in Windy City Riot, who will be doing the Stardom Philly show coming up next month during WrestleMania weekend. And well, we were a little bit surprised to see her name on the Cinderella roster, especially because of those comments that she had. Of course, she's also a very good friend of Hikaru Shida of AEW. So that's another factor that some people have been looking at, but that loyalty to Rossi is a big factor.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I think we also have Seth Rollins in this tier, right?
Oh yeah, sorry, I skipped over Seth Rollins. Yeah, let's go over Seth Rollins because he's a fun one.
Yes.
He is. Okay, so Seth Rollins is one where I think a lot of people might look at him and initially go, "Oh, he's a lifer." You know, he's a WWE lifer. He's going to be there his whole career. And I understand that sentiment. And a lot of people may be looking at this and saying, "How do you have him at B tier?" and think that that's way too high. And granted, maybe it is. Maybe it is high. But I will say this. He is someone that, especially when you look at this year and you look at this week and where we saw Okada landed and the reports of Tony Khan saying that he will not be outbid for Okada. He said
Yeah.
that was the report. He said he will not be outbid for Okada. People were reporting that. And you have to ask yourself, and these are the objective questions you need to ask yourself and look at these people. Will another promotion, in this case, would AEW or Tony Khan, would they value him more than WWE values him? Because you have to look at how he is presented in WWE. Some people might say he's presented very well. Some people may say he's presented like a geek. However you want to see it. He is definitely presented as a tier beneath the top guys. Like, he is not on like the Roman tier. He's not on the Cody tier. Like, they may try to present him that way, but he's a step below. He just is.
Yeah. And this is where it might get into a little bit of an opinion about the booking stuff. But it feels like, before they had introduced the World Heavyweight Championship, the new WHC, it feels like the way that they're booking it currently, the prestige of the belt, it feels very much so at the same tier as the Intercontinental belt is, because that belt has leveled up so much over the past few years of Roman's reign, especially due to Gunther. But that's kind of where it feels like the World Heavyweight Championship kind of slots in. And it's hard to look at things like the Vegas WrestleMania kickoff show, which was, of course, done months before WrestleMania and not in the same city. And you see him standing on stage, just doing nothing while The Rock and Roman and Cody have their little skit. He's just standing there, not talking. Nobody's referencing him. He just is there. Then in all these promo segments since then, he's just there. For some reason, he cares more about his character, I should say. His character cares more about Cody Rhodes's opportunity at WrestleMania than his own match at WrestleMania. And he's a world champion. So it's very weird the way that he's being booked. And also, his contract is up early this year. So there's a lot of smoke there about maybe the booking isn't what he wants it to be. He's made a lot of jokey comments in his normal style, sure, but he's making some increasingly jokey comments during interviews about how he views things at WWE. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see him go somewhere else, and I think that there are plenty of promotions that would gobble him up and spend big money, possibly more than WWE is willing to spend. I think that WWE does see value in him as a name, as a lifer, as some might say. But I think that there might be another promotion or two that might be trying to get him and want to spend some big money on him.
Yeah, and I think the thing to keep in mind is, like, if you're AEW and you look at the money that they throw around, they're not in a situation where they're, they're being particularly careful with the checkbook. But one thing to keep in mind is that, they could offer him his Omega match that he's wanted. They could offer him an Okada match. I mean, these are things as well. But I think the biggest thing, and it's going to be for 90% of these, it's going to come down to money.
Yes. Yeah. Especially these ones in the B, C, D tier. It's so much more about money than it is about, it's either about its interest first off from another promotion, but then is that promotion going to be sending me a lot more money?
Yes.
So next up we have Grizzled Young Veterans. They used to be up in S tier, and now they just came back down to B tier. So let's get into them.
Yeah. So they've been around and going to different promotions. They've been wrestling in TNA currently, correct?
Yes, they just did a best of 3 series with ABC, which is the Bullet Club faction there.
Yeah, and then the thing to keep in mind with them is that, once again, we just don't know where they're going to plant their flag. They're definitely revitalizing themselves. And yeah, as I said, they were in S tier because we thought, the guys are gonna end up somewhere. And right now they're in TNA, but we don't really know what the status is, if that's really where they're going to permanently stay. Are they going to be looking to go someplace else? Are they looking to go to AEW? I mean, we don't know. We just don't know.
Yeah, they're kind of the the best way I can think of them is that they're kind of make me think about um, they make me think about FTR and about how they're these guys are kind of the big tag name that is currently free agent. And it looks similarly to Mustafa Ali that they're kind of trying to do this indie circuit game for a little bit. Do a lot of appearances with Rev Pro and TNA. Maybe go do some New Japan stuff too. That's in the cards when when you're doing so many Rev Pro kind of dates. But it doesn't look like they're in a hurry to sign anywhere formally just yet.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. So then the last one on B tier is going to be Santana.
And yes, and this is a recent change.
Yeah, so this one, Santana is now, he was on, what was his tier before?
He was a D tier, which means we were less than 50-50 of him leaving and going somewhere else.
Yes, and now we have him at B tier. Personally, I had him a lot higher. So
yes, I'm
gonna take my victory lap a little bit that I thought he was leaving somewhere. And here's the thing, it's like he's had a lot of personal issues with people in AEW allegedly. Apparently him and Ortiz didn't necessarily get along anymore. There was talk that he really wanted to go on a singles run and didn't really want to be a tag wrestler anymore. And to be fair to him, I think that he has the potential. I mean, I think he has a lot of charisma. He has been working a lot more singles and the indies lately. And yes. I would not be surprised if he does succeed. I mean, I think he's a talented guy. I think he could definitely break out somewhere. I don't know where he would end up though. I mean, I could see him going.
Yeah, that's the thing here is this is why it was one of the more controversial discussions by the committee this week because we're not sure where he's going to end up. So there are some people that were saying this guy is definitely imminently going to sign somewhere big. It's going to happen. It's easy. Like, obviously, he had such prestige behind him as one of those ground pieces. No, foundations. That's a better word. He was one of the foundations of the early AEW tag scene, and everybody loved Proud and Powerful. They never got the title. And then now he wants so desperately to go singles, it seems. And that caused a bit of issues with him in AEW, possibly. So some people see it as possibly there might not be a lot of destinations for what he's looking for. I think that he could end up in TNA easily, but there are some promotions that we don't consider for the tier list, like an MLW even, where he could easily slot in there and have some fun. He has been picking up and working a lot of indies recently to try to work on that prestige of his singles work.
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. All right. So then from there, we'll move on down to C tier. And once again, even more so than B tier, there's a lot of names in here that I'm really not going to have much to say. I might just be like, yep, that's the tier.
Yep.
The first one, though, yeah. I think I will have some things to say. And that's
you're the biggest one on him, yes. I think.
So the first one I want to talk about is Ricky Starks. So Ricky Starks is a guy that I have pegged for a long time is likely to jump. We have him currently on C tier, which means 50-50, but I think he is someone who is incredibly talented, but he is in a promotion right now that is very, very difficult for him to break through. And we just saw that in the sense that he was on this tag run with Big Bill that wasn't bad, but it definitely felt like it was a placeholder role for him while they were building up other people. And since he's lost it, he hasn't really, I don't think he's been on TV since.
He has not been on TV since at all, which is kind of odd, but at the same time, it's like the angle of their loss. Their loss was a match. It was a pretty fun match too, but that match was kind of an angle just to get the belts onto Sting and Darby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing with him right now is, like I said, incredibly talented guy, but he's in a promotion that just brought in Will Ospreay. They just brought in Okada. Yeah. They're pushing Swerve. They have Takeshita that they're going to push. They have Hangman and you have Omega. It's like this is such a top heavy wrestling promotion right now with an embarrassment of riches on the top of the card.
Yes.
Meanwhile,
Yeah.
if you look at WWE, they're a promotion that has talent, but if you look at the top of the card right now, it's Roman, it's Cody, and then that's the top, and then everyone else is underneath it, where it's like Drew and Seth, and I guess
Yeah.
CM Punk when he comes back. And it's just like it's a lot easier to break through. Now,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, real quick, and I will say this: I don't know that necessarily WWE sees him at that level. I don't. I personally think he is absolutely a incredible talent, incredible charisma. He could be at that level if they really wanted him to. And he does have Cody there. I don't necessarily put as much stock into the he's Cody's friend thing that a lot of people like to, but I do think that could play a factor. And regardless, I think that at this time, if I was Ricky Starks looking at the landscape in AEW, I would see tons of roadblocks in my way. And, similar to the way Cody jumped, Cody realized that it's like, there's just no way I can break out in this promotion because it's just everyone is in my way and I need to change the road so that I can go forward. I think that that's what Ricky needs to do. And I frankly, that's kind of what I was arguing Seth needs to do. But
yeah.
they're very similar. So I think that I think Ricky should jump personally. I think he's very likely to jump unless, and once again, as I said, 90% of these things come down to money unless he just gets a massive big money offer.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Ricky is that the Big Bill tag team kind of thing was it's a super group kind of thing. It's not, they never had a tag name. And Big Bill famously last year, and everybody loved it, was teaming up with Brian Cage. Everybody loved that tag team. Then all of a sudden, he was tagging with Ricky Starks, got the tag titles. Ricky has not had an official singles title reign in AEW. He had the FTW, which is a sometimes maligned world unto itself. So it kind of felt like this was the olive branch by AEW of saying, hey, yeah, we can give you a tag title reign if you want. Because even though now they have 3 singles titles, or 4 singles belts in AEW, for some reason, they weren't slotting him up that high on the card. And also, well, for that matter, the TNT title seems a little bit lower than him, but has been dominated by Christian for the past year. So, yeah, as you were saying, I totally agree. I think that there is room for him at the top of the WWE card if he were to go over there. His promo style lends a lot to the work that you find in WWE. So yeah, but it's kind of 50-50 because there's not a lot of smoke really, other than like, oh yeah, this makes sense. And of course, money will be a big factor.
Yeah. All right, so the next one I want to talk about is Wardlow.
Yeah,
he's just the guy I think who has kind of hit a ceiling in AEW, but at the same time,
yes.
I don't necessarily know that there's any reason for him to go. I don't know that there's a whole lot of interest from WWE at this point. So he's just sort of a guy where if he left, I wouldn't be shocked. If he stayed, I wouldn't be shocked. So he's like perfect 50-50 C tier in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't have much else to say. He kind of, I feel like he's hit his ceiling in AEW. He keeps getting world title shots, but yeah, that's I totally agree with you. He could do well in the land of giants.
Yeah, I think the next couple of these we'll be going through kind of quick. Sami Callihan. Once again, I have literally nothing to say on Sami Callihan. I mean, he's doing his thing. For a while it seemed like, because I know he's like friends with Moxley. They both run Wrestling Revolver together, or at least I think Sammy more runs it. It's just that Mox works it a lot because it's largely in Ohio and sometimes Iowa. But
yeah, it's like Mox's passion promotion that he loves to show up in. I think Sammy officially runs it, but yeah, he was with TNA for a while, left TNA kind of suddenly out of nowhere. Yeah, so it's I think that he is a 50-50 shot of signing with somewhere. As time goes on though, I think it's getting less and less likely that he's gonna pop up in a major promotion, and maybe not just, or for that matter, just go back to TNA for that matter.
Yeah, I think that he's weighing his options, and maybe he's realizing he doesn't have as many. So
yeah. Now the next one might have a little bit more to talk about, but it's a fun one. It's Kevin Owens.
Kevin Owens, I would put in the same vein as Seth Rollins, except in the sense that I don't know that. I guess I'd put him in the same vein as Seth Rollins. He's someone I could definitely see being offered a lot of money from AEW to make the jump. He's friends with the Young Bucks. I mean, the last time his contract is up, him and the Young Bucks were teasing stuff to him potentially jumping. That may have just been to kind of give him some leverage in negotiations, but when it did, because he had a massive contract last time. But he may jump. He may stay. He's a perfect C tier. The only thing I will say with him, and I'm not usually one to kind of put a lot of stock in this, but he is a guy who was always like, WWE is my dream kind of guy. I mean, he was, when he even worked on the indies, like he was never like, he was never like a tape trader or anything like that. He was a straight WWE fan, like growing up. That was his thing. So he might be like perfectly content where he's at, comfortable where he's at. The only thing I'll say is he is a family man, a real strong family man, and he may like that AEW schedule of only working, once a week and not have to go on these long tours. So that's
he's also somebody that's pretty open to doing interviews where it sounds like he might be doing a shoot at times. And saying his feelings on certain people, like CM Punk, for example, or the booking at the top of the card. There was a little bit of an interview with him and Becky Lynch down in Australia, where they just kind of joked about how Roman was booked and how he's never there and things like that. So of course, could also be just in character, but he seems to be somebody that loves doing that. So,
and also, I guess it should be said that he does not get along with CM Punk.
Oh, no, obviously not. Definitely not. So that's Kevin Owens. Who do we got next?
So I think we should do the next two together. We have Kiyomiya and Katsuhiko Nakajima. So they're interesting in the sense that they're both like big Japan names and smaller promotions that are kind of in flux. So Kato Kiyomiya, obviously an ace in Noah, but he's been doing stuff in New Japan here and there. Less the last couple months, but there was a lot of talk of maybe he might jump. I mean, he was in the G1. He got big brothered by Okada for a year and a half, it seemed. But that's still a big question mark. Is like, is he going to stick around in Noah, which is a promotion that is, let's say what it is. It's really struggling. Like they're not drawing houses as well as they need to be. They've been definitely, I think, since Muda left, and not to say, and because say what you will about Muda, but he was a ticket mover. He was
a draw. Yeah.
And he's gone now, and since then Noah's really kind of fallen off.
And you had to look at also then, as you said about that storyline with Okada. Well, Okada's not there, so now you have to think, there's 1 or 2 paths that New Japan could be looking at with Kato. Is it that we don't really need to book him as much, or could be, he could slot in there and give us somebody of that kind of caliber. It's not exactly the same ring style, but same caliber as an Okada of ring of skills.
Yes, and then you have Katsuhiko Nakajima, who's another
having
one
fun.
Huh?
He's having a lot of fun right now. It looks like too.
I mean, he's being a troll in All Japan right now, which is kind of the best way I would describe him. I'm going to be honest. It's like, I think a lot of people thought that he was going to be jumping and going somewhere. He would have a lot of interest. I don't know. It feels like a lot of that's cooled off. And I think he's kind of eased into his role in All Japan, and All Japan's slowly growing. He might just be sticking there for the time being.
Well, yeah, and he is, of course, the top champion in All Japan right now, and he's freelancing
Yeah.
with All Japan.
Which
Um,
says a lot that it's like you're the top. How the state of a lot of these Japanese promotions right now. It's like, oh, you're the top champ, but it's like you may not be sticking around. I mean,
yeah, he had mentioned before in an interview that he had some interest in AEW. TK has been asked about him, and he's like, yeah, I'm interested in him too. But it never felt to the same degree as when Tony Khan gets asked about like Mercedes Moné, or when he was asked about Mariah May before she showed up, and people like that. So it feels a little bit different. There were some reports that might have been pretty dubious of people trying to stir rumors of him showing up in NXT. Um, that might be related to some of the stuff also with Rossi. There's a theory there about WWE's hands in Japan right now. But yeah, Nakajima seems pretty 50-50 on whether and it might be a little bit lower now, and we might reconsider next week or coming up about if he it's more likely than not just to stay in All Japan.
yep. All right, the next one we're going to talk about is Finn Balor. He's another one on the C tier. Currently in the Judgment Day angle, he's presented very well, but at this point, it does feel like his role is to come out and say, "Stop booing Dom," right before people boo him, and it just here's the thing with Finn Balor. He's another guy that I think knows in the back of his head that he has a storyline that he could walk right into either New Japan or All Japan or all Elite Wrestling as the return of Prince Devitt, and
Yeah.
it would be a massive draw and a massive hit. And I think it'll come down to money, as with most of these. I think if and I don't know, Tony Khan has not said like anything about Devitt like at all.
Yes. This is the big one. This is the big one that I think that I think Finn Balor is in the Magnificent Seven, as we call it.
He is in the Magnificent Seven. Yes.
And he's one of the guys that a lot of people just looks at it and they're like, oh well, he was leader of Bullet Club. He was one of the founders of Bullet Club. Of course, he's going to want to jump at some point, or people are going to be interested in him. But there's not a lot of smoke to him going anywhere else right now. It's more just feels about it seeming possible. And he seems to be, yes, he is essentially only just hyping up Dom a lot in WWE right now. And that's a lot of how Judgment Day is currently structured. Rhea Ripley has had some of those issues too with how she's being handled on WWE right now as the top women's champion in a similar vein. So in the same way, though, we just we don't really look at Rhea Ripley going elsewhere right now as much either. So it's possible that maybe this is just something that Finn likes.
Yeah, that might be. All right. So the next one is, let me look at this. Who's this? Is that Suzu Suzuki? I can't quite tell.
It is Suzu Suzuki.
Okay. Yeah. So Suzu Suzuki is a prodigy. She's 20. I think she just turned 21.
Yes, yeah.
She's won the 5-star Grand Prix in Stardom. She was in Ice Ribbon, but jumped over to Stardom about a year and a half ago, and has really been presented strongly. The issue, though, is that she is probably more than anyone in that promotion linked very, very closely to Giulia.
Yes.
And with that, you have to wonder, is she going to be sticking around, or is she going to be making a jump? And she's been very quiet on this, especially at a time as slowly more and more Stardom talent are getting more vocal about whether, well, I'm going to be sticking around or I'm going to be going one way or another. Like you're hearing them speak up, and she is not. And she's still presented incredibly strong. In Stardom. So I would not be shocked to see her stay, but I wouldn't be shocked to see her leave. And also, if you're someone if she has interest in jumping to America, now would be a fantastic time for her to go. She's young. She has her whole career ahead of her. But she in my opinion, she's like the total package. She's just walking charisma, incredible presence. just perfect. So I think that she could do whatever she wants, frankly.
Yeah, and I don't have I don't have as much to say about how she presented in Stardom. I'm not as deep of a Stardom follower as you might be, but I will say that I do totally agree with you that this might be one of those times where you're going to see a bunch of talent looking at women's talent, looking at this is the time to do the move. You're looking at AEW about to get Mercedes Moné in the door. A lot of rumblings about possibly a women's Continental Classic this year with how big of a push that they're doing to these more strong style women's wrestling, a lot more Japanese kind of influence with the women's wrestling as of late in AEW. You look at WWE, there's a lot of room in WWE for women's talent right now, especially with these call-ups from NXT, this crop that a lot of people are liking of Tiffany Stratton and Roxanne Perez and stuff like that. As they move up to the main roster, it leaves a lot of space in the NXT tier for somebody like Susan Suzuki to slot in, especially if her friend there, Giulia, ends up over in WWE too. So, I think that you had good analysis there.
Yep. All right, and then the last one is going to be Shelton X Benjamin.
Yes.
So here's the thing with him. He's obviously has a lot of people pushing for him. John Moxley apparently was pushing for AEW to sign him. He's could go back to New Japan. He was really popular over there as part of the Suzuki Gun for a while. Actually, really popular. He was moderately popular. But the issue is he's 48 years old. I mean,
yeah,
it's at some point, it's like, especially right now, when you look at the other people you could be signing, it's just, I don't know that I necessarily see it with him. But I suppose it's possible, which is, once again, that's why he's C tier. And I don't know if I have much more to say about that.
I don't have much more to say about him either. Yeah, I think that you could slot in as a nice appearance roles in the AEW or New Japan, maybe get signed to TNA, but I'm not so sure of what's going to be his future here.
And also, it looks like we're right around that 1 hour mark here, Doug. So how about we take one last quick break for this episode? We'll be right back with the WrestleWatch Podcast. That was a nice little break there as we enter the home stretch of this pilot episode. Yeah, we call it a pilot, right? Yeah, of the WrestleWatch Podcast. We are going through and breaking down everyone currently on the Wrestler Movement tier list. I'm Ryan, and hey, Doug, how about you start us off on D tier?
All right, so now we'll do D tier, and even more so, I think we can kind of go through these quickly. So the first one, I'm not even sure who that is. Who was the first one?
It is Mickie James, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So Mickie James, I don't even know where to go with her, because she's someone who obviously bounces around different promotions. She'll go to WWE. She'll complain about WWE. She'll leave WWE. We had Garbage Bag Gate. We had
the Royal Rumble situation.
Yeah.
It's interesting with her because she just signed on at OVW as, I think, they're some kind of high-ranking official within their structure there. OVW currently not associated with WWE, as far as I'm aware, rather than in the past. But who's over in WWE? It's her husband. Yep. So that's what gets some of the buzz, and she has left TNA at the moment. So yeah, I don't think it's super likely for her to end up in TNA or WWE or any other promotion for that matter. But I think that it's still possible that she ends up in one of those places or pops up.
Yeah. All right. So the next one we'll go through, Cody. I don't know what we'll have to say about Cody, but here, Cody's at D tier currently, which means he's, not impossible for him to jump, but it's less likely. And I think there's a couple reasons why people kind of want him to have voted for him D tier. One, I think that there's kind of this idea that some people think that maybe like he's going to get he wasn't going to get his WrestleMania spot, or he's going to lose again, and they're just not going to give him his moment, which to me is less of the thing. I don't think that's necessarily the case. And even if it was, I don't think that would necessarily be the reason that he would jump. I think just in a lot of people's minds, especially in the back of their heads, they just have this feeling that Cody is eventually going to go back to AEW.
Yeah. It's one of those people that when you look at like Mercedes Moné this week with their comments about, I'll go back to WWE sometimes, I'm sure. It's kind of that same kind of feeling when you look at Cody. To me, in my gut, it doesn't mean, but at the same time, you look at it's such 50-50 on the way that you can feel about like looking at all the other metric kind of stuff of all the ancillary things of like, oh yeah, well, Cody's the cover athlete for 2K this year. Cody just got a random vodka company sponsorship to wrap his bus. But then at the same time, you're like, I'm not sure if Cody's going to win the belt at WrestleMania. I'm not sure if they're just going to, have him lose again and never get the top title. I'm just not sure about it.
And ultimately, I don't know. On the other end, it's like, I don't necessarily know that Cody left on good terms. Nobody's talking about it. No, he won't talk about it. No one in AEW is going to talk about it. But, he says it's a personal thing, How personal? I mean, if it was like really, really personal in the sense doesn't want to go back there for, if it was tied to something, with Brandy, perhaps, just speculating.
It's so weird how there was just nothing there. It was just, we just didn't come to terms.
Yeah.
There might have been some personal thing. Nobody knows what it is. Which, maybe that opens the door for things, but maybe that means that the door is closed and we just don't know it. But he's a fun one to think about. The next two we can do probably together. I would say
together. Yeah. So we got Buddy Matthews or Buddy Murphy. Is it Buddy Matthews, right? Yeah, Buddy Matthews and Malachi Black. Both of these are in the same faction. They came in pretty much the same time. They signed the same kind of deal, and they both seem to be unhappy being in AEW. But they've
Malachi. Yeah, Malachi seems disgruntled in AEW at times. Buddy seems not as disgruntled, but maybe he's just not vocal.
And also, not to make it about this, but they also have spouses that work for the other company.
Yes, so that kind of, especially for Buddy, makes it, considering where his spouse is on the roster, might make it more interesting. Now, of course, Malachi's spouse, she was fired and rehired and fired again or rehired again. I can't remember how many times that went around.
Yeah.
But it was during one of those like COVID era layoffs, so it might not be as major of a factor in looking at wanting to go back and not being sure if you're going to be able to stay around this time. But yeah, that's Malachi and Buddy. They're in D tier.
Yeah, and the reason that they're so low is not because you would think like, okay, well, these people want to go. Why are they so low? And the reasons for low is because they signed like insanely long contracts that I think it's like through like 2026, 2027.
Yeah, Malachi's contract, I believe, with all the option years was something like a 5-year deal. Now, the thing is, the back end has been rumored to be option years rather than fully committed contract years. So it's possible that Malachi gets out of the contract early. Now, it's also that we're looking at this a little bit more as smoke than it is a fire. He has never really made a comment directly, specifically about being unhappy in AEW or wanting to go back to WWE, and definitely not to the degree of somebody like Miro or Andrade or Punk. So, and those are that crop of the 2021 WWE signings to AEW. That crop has had a few people be more disgruntled than Malachi has been.
Yes. So moving along, next we have Matt Cardona.
Yes.
Former Zack Ryder, who has probably more than anyone in the last 5 years had a real career renaissance on the indies.
He's been the blueprint for what Mustafa Ali might be trying for, of slotting himself as like a super indie talent.
Yeah. And he created this whole new persona, this heel character on the indies, which is completely different than what he was doing in WWE, that has really worked out for him. Allegedly worked out very financially. I think he, in terms of merch, he does incredible at these GCW shows that I've seen him at. He has a long line.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's working out. So the question is, like, where would he go? Because he did do a brief stint in AEW before he figured his character out. It didn't go very well. This character could work in any promotion, honestly. I could see him going somewhere, but I think at this time, it's just there isn't any indication that he's ready to end this little indie run. So I think that's why he's at the D tier. But it wouldn't stun me if he did go somewhere.
Yeah, he also did a little bit of a run in what was Impact TNA after that AEW run. So that's another place that I could see him landing at if he ever wanted to be there long term. However, of course, he never signed. He's not. He never stayed. So now, of course, just like with Buddy and Malachi, his significant other is Chelsea Green, who has been handled extremely well in her return to WWE. Has been super over in a similar kind of vein role, being a little bit of a comedy heel, a little bit, but still somebody that you take seriously enough in the ring. Matt Cardona's persona on the indies of the deathmatch legend, Matt Cardona, the arch heel of the indies. People will love it. People just love that character, and it could easily slot in a lot of different promotions.
Absolutely. All right, and then the last one we have on this list is probably the more interesting one, probably the only really interesting one on the list. Is
I think we have two on this level, but yeah, sorry.
Oh yeah, that's true. So we have Drew McIntyre. Oh, and sorry,
yes.
and Becky Lynch. So yes. I guess we'll do Becky Lynch first. So Becky Lynch, similar to Seth, it's like, I mean, she's presented extremely well, but she is also questionable how well she's presented. So it's kind of weird. It just depends how you want to look at it. But she's someone who, once again, it's the money. I mean, I think that she has a young family now. She may want to be home more. There's talk a while ago that people are saying, oh, she's thinking about retiring. I don't know how credible that is, but
yeah, I think that might be some people thinking about the bygone era of how North American women had, where it was like, oh, you're 30, now you're old. And that's just not the case anymore. And now the thing is with Becky, of course, her contract is expiring in June 2024, as reported by Fightful. And she's been a bit more open, just like how Seth and Kevin Owens have been, of mentioning possible things that she doesn't like about how WWE are booking people. And also, for that matter, she's mentioned in interviews she has nothing left to do in WWE. She's said, I've done everything. I've main evented WrestleMania. I've been world champion so many times. She's been the top draw of WWE before, even. She doesn't have a lot to do there, but at the same time, it's not a lot looking at possibly going anywhere else. Yeah, she could retire, sure, but I could definitely see her doing something in another promotion, but there hasn't been any solid rumors yet.
Yeah, I think ultimately it's going to come down to probably money and the terms of what her contract's going to say she has to work and dates. So we'll see.
Yeah, and I think that her and Seth probably are a package here, but I think that Seth he feels a little bit more likely to jump than Becky is.
I think so too. So the next one I'm going to look at is Drew McIntyre, who I think is someone who's been interesting in the sense that he's gone from like S tier down to D tier over the course of the last month and a half. And which is understandable in the sense that you look at where he was before, where he was openly antagonistic on Twitter about his booking. He was openly refusing to sign contracts that were being put in front of him, and And obviously, a lot of people thought that he would do well outside of WWE because he did do well outside of WWE. He was fired before, went outside of WWE, went on the indies, and reinvented himself. So he's someone who's not afraid to do that because he's done it already. However, as time goes on, he seems to be, booked a little bit better. It sounds like the rumors are and the notes are that they've come to terms on an agreement that he hasn't necessarily signed yet.
Yes, yeah. So it's very weird because his contract allegedly was going to expire around the Rumble, and then it became, there might be injury times, there might be WrestleMania, and then it's, they've agreed to a deal, but he hasn't signed it yet. It's very nebulous what we've been hearing about him. And similar with Cody, actually. Cody, there's some people that have said he signed in October, and then some people have said, no, he just given a contract, he never signed it. So, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see with those. So the next ones I want to try to go through kind of a little quicker, just because I gotta, I may have to wrap up in a little bit, but we'll keep that in mind in the future, how long this will take. But also, I think in our next videos, we're probably not going to go through every single one. Maybe we'll just talk about the adjustments. So that probably won't take as long. So the last tier is F tier. The first one's going to be Jack Perry. So obviously, I don't think anyone's expecting him to leave AEW. He's in AEW, even though he went to New Japan and ripped up the contract and has joined House of Torture. But this is all clearly just a storyline angle. He's famously had an issue with CM Punk, was suspended, more likely than not, just because of the fight. But, he's a guy who's clearly going to be sticking around. I don't think that's why he's on F tier. But I absolutely kept him there just because he's someone who you could see WWE showing interest in. Maybe not now that Punk is there, but I mean, at some point he was. I think it was understandable.
Yeah, I think any of the four pillar guys could have been, and four pillars plus Ricky, I suppose, and plus Britt Baker for that matter. Those are the guys that you could have looked at. Sure, they could definitely jump. And actually, the next person here is MJF, and get interest from other promotions like WWE specifically. But yeah, Jack doesn't seem super likely. But given all that's happened in the past year, it's possible.
Yeah. So, and then MJF, I think the big thing with him is everyone kind of assumes that he's already resigned.
Yeah.
I think obviously WWE, he would do great there. He fits their mold well. Obviously, the stuff that he tried booking with his title reign was very similar to the stuff that WWE likes to do. But I think it's fair to say he's signed. I think if he wasn't under contract right now, we would know.
Yeah, it seems like the feeling is that when he did the Mark Shoot promo at that first Dynamite at the LA Forum, that was probably when he resigned, because why would you let him do that without resigning? Why would you let him have a over 1 year longest title reign ever without resigning? So more likely than not has already resigned, just hasn't been formally announced.
Yes. And then the next one is Sari, who is I don't even know where to go with this one, because
that's the hardest one to talk about.
She supposedly signed a contract with Sukeban, which is a whole other issue, because I don't even know what to make of that promotion at this point.
We don't know if it's even real.
Yeah, exactly. We don't know who's backing it. And because whoever's backing it has money, because they're just giving away booze at these shows and things like that. The production is interesting. I won't say it's good, but it's interesting and it looks expensive.
Yes, yeah. But at the same time, with her, what has she been doing recently?
Yeah, she's about to probably take the belt off Mayu Iwatani in Stardom, or the IWGP Women's title. So it's like, what is? I don't know what to make of this. Either way, it doesn't seem like she's going anywhere. I mean, because she could sign with Bushi Road, especially if she's going to win this IWGP Women's title. And that would make sense. And I think we have her at F tier right now, because we apparently saw her sign a 3-year deal or something with Sukeban.
Yeah, and it's like, well, yeah, sure, she signed a 3-year deal with Sukuban, but what even is Sukuban? We can't say that it's like something that, like, if somebody signed with MLW, we'd be like, okay, yeah, sure, Matt Riddle signed with MLW. He's not on the tier list. Done. Conversation over. This promotion, we have no idea what the hell it is. And you look at what's happening with her in Stardom, you're like, okay, maybe she goes there or maybe not, because at the same time, a lot of flux in Stardom. Bushiroad over in New Japan has had a little bit of a spree of handing out titles to people that are not long-term signed to them, or just recently joined the promotion. When we look at Nick Nemeth, when we look at Matt Riddle, so it might just be another one of those kinds of, or last night, Stephanie Vakor won a title that's in the New Japan stable of titles. So maybe it's just one of those things. Who knows?
Yeah, it's definitely odd. All right, and next we have who is that? I can't even tell.
El Phantasmo.
Oh, okay, yeah. So El Phantasmo is someone that I always kind of saw him as someone that I could see a promotion being interested in. I think he's charismatic. He carries himself in a way that would fit well in an American promotion. And the biggest thing is that he's really close with Jay White, and he would really be a good fit for Bullet Club Gold.
Yeah, I mean, that was what the storyline was at first, was when David Finlay snuck attack and tried to take over Bullet Club. ELP was like, well, I'm in Bullet Club Gold, and then they just kind of dropped that in New Japan.
Yeah, and now it doesn't seem like they've gone they haven't gone anywhere with that, so it doesn't look like he's making any jumps. So it looks like he's going to be sticking around. He's still
he's also super over in Japan right now.
Yeah, people really don't understand how popular, like even David Finlay. It's like people in the West, I think, really don't like David Finlay and think he has go away heat, but he has like genuinely, I think he has good heat in Japan.
He's starting to turn around that, especially I think in the most recent series of matches with United Empire, with that legally distinct from War Games match. People are starting to like him a lot, and the stuff that he's doing with Nick Nemeth is some good graps, honestly. So yeah, ELP super over, could go anywhere, but at the same time, more likely than not staying exactly where he is.
Yep. And then finally, the last one here is Daniel Garcia. So I want to just say this with Daniel Garcia. I think there's a lot of people who completely misunderstand his booking. And people are saying that he's losing too much and he's not getting a push. And it's just like, he's losing a lot and he's getting more over. Like, this is like, this is working what they're doing with him. Is like more over than he ever was. And it's because they're slowly building him up, this stuff with Daddy Magic. And this is all working. This is exactly what they should be doing with him. And by all accounts, Tony Khan is very, very into keeping him. I think that he's going to make a solid offer. I don't know that WWE would. I really don't.
Yeah, I don't see him going to WWE. I could see him going to New Japan, though, for that matter, because he kind of fits into their ethos, their style.
But even if he did that, I could think that would be under an AEW deal.
Possibly.
I don't know he would jump, especially with the yen right now.
Yeah, and as you were saying about the booking, like it's like Takeshita, where he just lost and lost and lost, but he was getting so over. He was almost the top babyface for a second there. Takeshita was, just by losing. Or if you look, it really reminds me a lot of in New Japan with the current Musketeer lineup, where you look at like a Shota Umino, and he is losing a lot right now, but he is possibly their most over pure babyface right now in New Japan. I feel he's starting to bubble up like that. So, but he's losing just like Danny Garcia is. But Danny, he has the crowd behind him. The booking is not him getting buried, as some people are saying. It's totally not that. But his contract currently looks like it's up this year. That's why he's on the tier list in some degree.
All right. So that was the tier list. So
yeah,
this was sort of our episode 0. We were just kind of like testing this out, seeing how this would go. And I think it went well.
Yeah, I think it went well. Yeah, I had a good time chatting with you about all these talents. And yeah, as a reminder, the concept behind this is just seeing where things are going to go for these people. It's supposed to be a little bit of fun, but at the same time, looking at it critically and trying not to get any biases in here. So if anybody listening has thoughts, let us know.
All right. So and as I said, we'll be back in a week to kind of talk this out again. It probably won't be as long because we're probably just going to be discussing changes. I don't think we need to discuss every single person every single week.
Probably not.
No, but yeah.
Next week, we're probably going to be talking about Mercedes. So stay tuned for that.
Yes. And then we're also going to have a Twitter account or X account that we're going to be tweeting out the tier list every single week that the WrestleWatch committee came up with. So you'll be able to see that as well and just kind of follow along as we make adjustments. Right,
yeah. So yeah, with that, until next time, I'm Ryan.
And I'm Doug.
All right. Thank you.